the biggest applause line that he got from his speech at the inauguration, right after he took the oath, was about genders, that there's only going to be two genders, male and female. And I was thinking to myself, and I wanted to ask you this, because I knew you were going to be on our show, did Democrats push the country too far left? Did they go too far with their policies? And did the country sort of react? And because of that reaction, that reflex, if you will, Donald Trump became president again?
Well, I guess I made the face I made, Tom, because Democrats didn't run on genders, they didn't run on trans issues, they didn't run on any of that. The only people that did run on that, in fact, were some Republicans in key races across the country, both in Senate races and House races, and the President of the United States, Donald Trump. What Democrats did not do well, and what they need to figure out how to do well in the next, immediately, frankly, is
but
how
Symone,
to...
real quick, so as you say that, Symone, we're looking literally at B-roll of all those rallies that were supported by Democrats. And it's a position that I know you support, and I'm not taking a side on the issue.
But
I'm just saying, did that turn people off?
I mean, let's just be clear here. These are people, these are activists who have shown up at rallies with signs that say protect trans kids. So how are the people at the rallies with signs that say protect trans kids now... What are we saying here? And I think that's why we have to be specific. I actually believe why why the people in that crowd are raising their arms and rallying for yes, the two genders, is because they've been sold a bag of goods. Because what the underlying message of that is that the Democrats care about the legislating gender, and they don't care about you and the issues that are close to your families. And we're going to center, Republicans, Donald Trump, we're going to center the issues that are close to you and your families. And that statement is actually not true. And so that's why I say that what Democrats really have to figure out is how they respond to the attacks that are lobbed against them when it is not their policy, when it's not their position. There's not a Democrat that I know that was running that said, my goal is to, make sure that my bathrooms are my #1 issue. That's actually not true. But they have to be able to respond to the attacks while being specifically proactive about their own message. Democrats who are elected and trying to be elected, they don't need to be the resistance. They are the other governing party, and that's how they should act. They're the other governing party. They're a party with power, and they need to act like it and find out what their one accord is. And I don't think we know what that is just yet.
On that point, in the same conversation, Rob, how did Republicans not fall into that same trap, right? Because you guys will say the Democrats push the country too far to the left, right? That's a conversation I'm having there with Symone. How does President Trump and Republicans make sure they don't push the country too far to the right, so in 4 years you have a Democrat that gets elected?
Well, first of all, on this issue of gender and sexes, I think you start with an area where there is broad agreement, and that's that men should not be playing in women's and girls' sports. There is consensus among Democrats and Republicans on that issue. And so I think that if Trump starts with something like that, he won't be far-reaching. But then you can tackle other issues. Obviously, this came up in Congress with the National Defense Authorization Act, and they banned surgery for minors, through TRICARE. So there are things that they can do. I think that they'll look for opportunities where there is consensus in the polling. But then on other issues, I mean, certainly there's, whether it's energy production in the country, you heard a lot of applause. I was there with you at Capital One Arena there today. You heard applause on some of the international goals he has, whether it be the Panama Canal or the Gulf of America. So I think there's a number of things that'll excite the American people, and he'll just have to see whether or not he's pushing them a little bit too aggressively.
So for people who don't know you're at the Heritage Foundation too, right? So you're somebody who has deep core conservative beliefs, right? You stick to your guns. Does it drive you crazy that President Trump is somebody who at first wasn't for TikTok, and someone like Secretary of State Marco Rubio is against TikTok as well? They think it's the way Chinese spy on Americans. And then Trump invites the TikTok CEO to the inauguration and now supports TikTok and expands the ban and giving it another 90 days. He's against the EV mandate, and yet his closest advisor now seems to be Elon Musk. I mean, there's sort of all these discrepancies there that who is the real Donald Trump, and do you believe what he says?
Well, conservatives will always be principled. I mean, TikTok's another area where I think there's agreement. I mean, I think Symone and I probably would agree on the national security threat that TikTok poses to this country. And so I think conservatives, as long as they stand firm on those issues and make sure that Donald Trump understands those concerns, that is the role that they'll play. That's a similar role that they played during George W. Bush's administration when Bush, deviated from conservative positions. You look back at when he picked Harriet Miers for the Supreme Court and the revolt that conservatives had. So you might see some of those, but I think overwhelmingly conservatives are going to get along with Donald Trump and this agenda that he's pushing.